More Sony news. And this was like an interesting one. So this was primarily from a GQ article with Jim Ryan. And just really like dropping things. And even like I don't know if you guys have read, I know Swinny would have. Mike, I don't know if you read through the GQ article, but it's quite funny to read an article where they're almost going, we almost didn't expect all this stuff to come out in the article.
It felt like the guy's like, oh, can I ask this question? And Jim Ryan's like, oh yeah, this and this and this and this.
Yeah, and I think any good reporter will ask the questions that even if they feel like, there's going to be a no. You're not going to tell me this. But yeah, they went through and he really went out and confirmed a lot of things and confirmed games that were pushing out and initiatives and things like that. So probably some of the biggest ones are, and, I touched on it earlier in the podcast, but, Sony is seeing dividends in releasing games on PC. It is not cutting into their sales of PlayStation or games on PlayStation. And I think, you're seeing this with things like, if you offer a game to Xbox Game Pass and you track the sales data, the game starts to sell more. And it's this kind of exposure lens. People get exposure to the game. People go, this is going to go off Game Pass. It's on sale at the moment. I'm just going to get it because I really like this game. And I would have never played it before. They tell their friends. Correct. Yeah. And it creates a nice virtuous, circle of, sales. And, they're seeing that with PC. And Jim Ryan, who's the head of Sony Interactive Entertainment, has confirmed that they are going to push even more games into the PC sphere, starting with Days Gone, which I think is really smart. Like that game had a very bad launch in terms of most folk who were reviewing the game had a broken build of it. And some people just brutalized the game, gave it very low scores. Supposedly, people who played the later revisions of the game sort of went, hey, this has jumped 1 or 2 points up on a 10-point scale.
Okay.
So I actually am keen to try this game. This game's part of the PS
free.
Plus collection. If you have PS Plus, so
I have a physical copy of it as well, no less, and I have not played it. So
you might want to try it.
To be fair, I got that as a present, but still. Oh no, I started the intro. I'm like, this is exactly the kind of game I love. I love zombie games. I love post-apocalyptic games. Yeah. So it's perfect for me. I just too much other stuff, but it's absolutely high up on my list. So actually, I was tossing last night between that and Detroit Become Human. Become Human. As to which one I'll tackle next, and it ended up being Detroit. So I'm going to do Detroit next.
I was literally going to play Detroit Become Human last night as well.
Whoa,
that's funny. Anyway, I'll pause there. So Days Gone, that's coming out Q2 2021. Yes, we don't know what other games are coming out to PC, but I mean, imagine if they put God of War on PC. It would be fascinating.
So that just brings me to the whole point about we haven't seen like much impact. Well, I know Horizon Zero Dawn was a huge game. I'm not underplaying that, but it wasn't God of War.
No.
So that's my question is like, how can you like? To me, that's like you can't make a judgment on call on that yet until you release a God of War or Last of Us on PC. Let me just finish. And also, you're releasing these games well after they come out. So at some point, do you start to reduce the time distance between when it launches on PlayStation and then see how that impacts it? Because I think at some point there will be a point where it makes sense where it's like, well, Bloodborne, let's say Bloodborne 2, if that's ever a thing. Well, I know if they ever put Bloodborne on PC as part of this, well, I know that might come to PC one day. So, the more you release, the more people might wait. So, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, look, I think on that, the time thing, Sony's very conservative with these things. I think they'll always wait a 12 to 18-month window before they re-release it on PC.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think you're spot on, Swinny. I do get this sense that God of War will come out to PC. I'm actually not so sure about Last of Us. I just feel like that's something about that game that they want to keep on PlayStation. But maybe, God of War just kind of, I don't know. I can't really fully articulate it, but I just feel like God of War #1 is just such a PC crowd game. Like that to me, just like is just it feels like a PC game to a small degree, whereas Last of Us feels more like a movie, more of an experience, more suited, I think, to a controlled environment, which is like, consoles are a controlled gaming environment.
I guess, yeah, but it's been so long since its initial release. Other than
I know.
worrying
It's
about
just a
any
sense.
impact that it has to part 3, if there's a part 3,
Yeah.
there's no reason not to do it, especially after so much time has passed. So Horizon Zero Dawn's an interesting one because anecdotally, I've had 3 friends that have said they want the game when it was a PlayStation exclusive, and they wished it was on PC because they didn't play PlayStation.
Yeah.
G-Man was one of them, and a couple of others. And then it came out, and all 3 of them actually bought the game on PC. It's a shame that it kind of ran a bit crap and whatnot, and had some issues, but supposedly it has. But it's still like they were keen about that. They're not once that they mentioned God of War, interestingly enough. Now, I know that's a super small sample size, so you can't go by that, but it's fascinating that different people obviously want different things. Bloodborne is the number one thing that that my friends have said, oh man, I wish Bloodborne was on this. I'd play it to death, blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, that isn't available. And I just think it comes to a certain point where the game's been out for so long that there's no harm in a way to release it on PC, because it's not, at this point, it's not cutting into your PlayStation sales. No one is now going, man, I really want that Horizon Zero Dawn or that God of War game that was released, 3-4 years ago, and I'm going to buy a PlayStation just for that.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
No, it's so few people now. You'll get way, way, way more sales out of the selling the game itself on PC than you would out of people holding off just to get it on PlayStation. After all this time,
I kind of agree with Swinny. I don't think they've put enough games on there to really test that, because I do think that there's some critical level of games where people start to look at it and go, why get a PlayStation? They're all going to come to PC, versus still there's so many exclusives to PS4, PS5 that you can't play anywhere else. Like, so much so that you go, if I'm really into gaming and all this kind of stuff, okay, I'm just going to get a PS5. Like, it makes sense. There's Last of Us. There's all these other games that, you can't play anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
There's a tipping point. I do think there's a tipping point, and they haven't come anywhere near that tipping point.
But how do you define that tipping point? Because I think the only way to know potentially how this will pan out is obviously, to test the waters and see how it goes. But that's a difficult thing to do when you only release, a small handful of hits that you can test with every couple of years or something. It's not something you can iterate every month and get something new out there.
This is not an every year thing. Like, as part of that interview, he was like, we're moving forward with this. So this is not going to be, they're obviously going to trickle it, but it's not going to be the time frame between Horizon and Days Gone. They're going
I get that, but what I'm saying is it's you've got such a small sample size of exclusive games that you can test this with, that it's hard to test. Usually you need, in order to really get good quantitative and qualitative data, you need to be able to have a whole bunch of different things you can test with.
I don't think it's a small group at all, because if you think about it, they've got Last of Us Remastered Collection,
they got so many.
God of War, they've got Spider-Man.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah,
they've got all the
got a few that they
Gran Turismo,
Ratchet and
could
Clank.
test it with. But what I'm saying is, what you can't test ultimately is, we've now released one game. Oh wow, it's really successful on PC. Has it affected our PlayStation sales? No, it really hasn't. We've made quite a bit of money out of this game. You've released 2 games, you've released 3 games. What if you release 5 games and all of a sudden that equation completely changes, because all of a sudden people do go, well, hang on a minute, it looks like they're releasing all the games on PC. Why am I buying a PlayStation? Which is exactly what we're saying.
Yeah, that's
so it's hard to, but where's that point? It's hard to figure out where that point is. But so
let me answer your question though, because you're asking a question, right? The point has been reached for something like Xbox for me. Like, I won't buy an Xbox because there's enough games on PC and there's so few exclusives that, to me, it's at a point where I look at it and go, I'm paying in Australia $750 to play, 5 exclusive games that are only on Xbox console. Like, essentially, I'm going, well, each game I'm paying, it's like $100 Australian already to buy the game, and then another $100 and something dollars for the console cost, right?
Yeah.
It's not worth it, right? So there is a tipping point. There has to be a tipping point, because some people are so bolted onto PC, and I think it's the best platform, by the way.
But see, this is the key thing that I'm wondering though. You're one of those people, much like myself, and I guess Funny as well, that's privileged because we have the options there, and we have a PC that is capable of doing that, and a console's almost like a secondary thing. I'd love to see a split, and I'm sure it exists somewhere out there, and I don't know how accurate it is, that shows how many people have only a single console versus multiple consoles versus PC alone versus PC with multiple consoles. You know, like I'd like to see that, because I think that governs some of this as well. So we're in a position where it's like, man, I've got so many other consoles that you're right. Why would I also get an Xbox if I can do all this on PC? Sure. But it's funny because you didn't get an Xbox, whereas I'm like, yes, I can do that, but I still went out and got an Xbox.
I haven't even opened it.
I think we need to wrap up the rest of this news.
I agree.
We're talking a long time.
The other major, there's two other. Well, sorry, I'll just touch on quickly. Gran Turismo 7, they have confirmed that's been pushed back to 2022.
Boo,
I think
game I'm looking
some of these games you'll find just, you know, they haven't transitioned well to the working at home sort of approach. Talking about working at home, Sony are bringing back their Play at Home initiative, which I think is really awesome. They did it last year with Nathan Drake Collection and Journey, which is really cool. Two great, games. I mean, Nathan Drake's a collection. They haven't confirmed all the games, but they've already said that in March, so just a couple of days from now, tomorrow, Ratchet and Clank will be free for everyone in the month of March, which beyond PlayStation Plus. Just anyone who has a PlayStation 4 or 5 can get Ratchet and Clank for free. So that's I think awesome. Nice. And they've said that they're going to do that for 4 months. So it'd be really fascinating to see what games they push out on there. And then finally, they have confirmed in this interview, and a lot of people were waiting for this because their hard drives are filling up, that they will update the firmware to allow for you to install an approved SSD into the PS5. They have also noted that they're working on making and unlocking the fan speed of the PS5, which makes me very nervous, because initially when they did the tests and, people ripped apart the PlayStation, there wasn't very good cooling on the part of the board where you put the SSD. And now the fact that they've already said they want to increase the fan speed, I almost look at it and go, have they kind of stuffed up the design a little bit where, they really needed a better heatsink for the SSD, because these SSDs can get insanely hot, like insanely hot. So I think that's a bit of a watch this space, but that will be in the second half of this year where they'll have that firmware update, and we'll know which SSDs are approved for installation. So yeah, hell of a lot of Sony news this week. Really cool stuff, really interesting stuff. Kind of surprised they didn't flow this into the state of play. Very surprised.
So much news, in fact, that they crashed Xbox Live for a day. So,
and yeah, we'll get to the other major announcement this week, which was the Pokemon Presents